Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, it's our immense pleasure to welcome you all to our fourth session on Creator Tech Connect series on V2 API and Open API specification offering in Zoho Creator. So, for those who do not know about what a Creator Tech Connect series is, it would comprise of pure technical sessions in which we will delve deep into the key essentials and technical nuances while building a solution in Creator. So, in this session, we will give a comprehensive and a deep outlook on two different concepts. One is V2 API and the step by step process to connect to other applications using Creator's V2 API. Another is a new offering in Zoho Creator, which is Open API specification, which we call it as OAS. And this is an interface for producing, consuming, and visualizing the web services. I'm Abhinaya Kannan. I'm from Zoho Creator training team, and I'll be the host for today's session. So before getting started off with the session, we've got few housekeeping points. All the attendees will be put on mute throughout the session. There is a questions tab that is available on left-hand side of the panel. You can make use of this questions tab to ask your questions. Our co-trainers will be addressing them simultaneously. A recording of this session will be sent to all the attendees, so you don't have to worry about that. And we would request you to participate in the polls and surveys that's initiated during the session and post-session. Your suggestions and feedbacks are very much important to us in framing our upcoming session. So let's get started now. So before starting or getting into the actual topic, we will get to know what an API is. So if two different application wants to talk to one another, that's when API comes into picture. In other terms, it enables companies to open up their application data and functionality to the third-party developers or the business partners or internal departments in a secured way. So this also allows the services and products to communicate with each other and leverage each other's data and functionality through an interface. So what are the components of API? We have four different components. One is the authentication, next one is the limitation, third one is the methods, and the fourth one is responses. When I say authentication, there are two different types of authentication. One is a basic authentication where we make use of username and password or the user credentials. And the second type is the authentication key, where we rely upon the token or the key generation for the data flow to happen. And the second one is an API limitation. So, for example, how many APIs requests can be handled per day or per second. And third one is a method. There are four different methods that can be handled. So one is get, another is post, third one is put, and fourth one is delete. So get is used for creating a record, and post is used for updating or creating. Get is used for retrieving the data, and post is used for creating a record, and put is used for updating the record, and delete is used for deleting the record. And coming to the responses, there are two different responses that you can receive from the API. One is a JSON response, another is a XML response. So coming to the REST API concept. So REST APIs communicate via the HTTP request to perform the functionalities like creating, reading, updating, and deleting records, what we call as CRUD operation. So here you could see a diagrammatic representation where the client sends a request through the HTTP URL. It could be get, post, put, or delete method. And on the other side, server will receive the request and it will send a response over the HTTP request. And finally, the client will receive the response in the form of JSON or XML. So when API is concerned, every application will have an endpoint. So within Creator, we have an endpoint which is REST API. That is, the Creator supports REST API, where it allows all the external websites to interface with the Creator application data or functionality. So these REST APIs can be used to perform addition, deletion, or update operations within Zoho Creator application. So for any application to communicate with one another, each application should have an endpoint URL, and within Creator, it's REST API. The communication happens over the interface, and this process, we call it as integration. So there are four different integrations that are supported within Zoho Creator. One is integration creator, another is integration fields and forms, third one is inbuilt integration task, and fourth one is OAuth V2 API. So with Integration Creator, you can connect to 600 plus data sources in the real time. That is, the real time sync happens without having to write the code. And we have integration fields and forms within Creator, which can be made use of to connect to the Zoho's ecosystem or third-party applications like Salesforce and QuickBooks. And coming to the inbuilt integration task. So if you want if you want the data flow to happen between the same account, that is account A is in Zoho Creator and account B is also account that is Zoho Creator, and let's take Zoho People or Zoho CRM. So both are the single sign-on system. If the data flow wants to happen between these two applications, then we can make use of inbuilt integration task, or what we call it as the deluge task. So few other third-party application or the built-in tasks are also supported with an inbuilt integration task. Coming to the OAuth V2 API. So if you want the data flow to happen between two different accounts or to a third-party application, then we go for OAuth V2 API. So coming to the OAuth V2 API. So let's take two different products. One is Zoho Creator, and Zoho Creator is in account A. And let's take another Zoho product. It could be Zoho CRM or Zoho People, Zoho Books, etc. So which we are taking it to be account B. So if you want the data flow to happen between account A and account B accounts, then we can make use of OAuth API. And also on the right-hand side, you could see the data flow between account A and the third-party application, that is account X. So in this case, we make use of OAuth API for the data flow to happen. So the next is OAuth working mechanism. Let's take a client application and see how the data communication happens. For the two applications to communicate with one another, first process is the authentication or the authorization request. So the client needs to send a request to Zoho Creator. The first process is sending the authorization request to the resource owner. When I say resource owner is the end user or the account owner of Zoho Creator application or Zoho Creator account who will provide or grant access to the Zoho Creator application data or functionality. So once the authorization request is sent, the resource owner will send the authorization code, and this happens to the authorization server. So the authorization server will be residing over the Zoho Creator site, and this authorization code will be produced. This is the second step. And with the help of this authorization code is a short-lived code. With the help of this authorization code, two different tokens will be generated. One is the access token, another is a refresh token. So the client communication happens by making use of this access token and refresh token. So here, next step is a resource server. So with the help of this access token and refresh token, this access token is a short-lived token which will expire within 1 hour, that is 60 minutes. Whereas refresh token doesn't have expiry. So with the help of refresh token, we will be producing the access token, and we'll be making use of this access token for the communication, for the client to communicate with Zoho Creator. And finally, with the help of this access token, the client will have access to the protected resource from the resource server on the Zoho Creator site. So when I say resource server, it stores all the protected resources like the data, functionality, or the metadata within Zoho Creator application. To put it in a nutshell, first is the authorization request, and then it will produce the authorization code. Once since this is a short-lived code, with the help of this authorization code, access token and the refresh token will be generated. And with the help of the access refresh token, which doesn't have the expiry, access token can be generated. So this access token will be used for the uninterrupted flow to happen. So here the client will make use of this access token to communicate with Zoho Creator. And this will be produced from the resource server on the Zoho Creator site. And finally, the client will have access to the protected resources from Zoho Creator application. So let's look at how the URL looks like. Dynamic API of Creator components. So https:/creator.zoho.com/API/v2. And what you see here as JSON 18 is the account owner name. And followed by that, /Zilker-store is the application name. And followed by that, you have the form and also the form name. So what are the different scopes of operations that can be performed within Zoho Creator? So OAuth that enables the client application to gain the limited access. And apart from that, we have data APIs. Using data APIs, you can add, get the data, get all the data, or get data specific to a record ID. You can update the data, update all the records, delete the record, or delete all records. And we also have publish APIs to access the published components to add and get the records. We have meta APIs to get the fields, forms, reports, pages, sections, applications by workspace. And we have file APIs. If you wanted to upload or download files from the main form or the subform, we can make use of the file APIs. And we also have bulk APIs, which supports bulk read to fetch a large set of data. So let's get into the real-time use case, which is Zilker Asset Management System. Let's take an organization called Zilker Information and Technology. That is Zilker IT organization. So which has got different units. One is the procurement unit, which handles the asset procurement, goods inward, stocking of items in the warehouse. And next is a storekeeping unit, where the asset request can be raised, asset issue and return happens, and the disposal of the asset happens. So coming to the third one, services and maintenance of assets, service and maintenance units, where you place the assets for services and maintenance, and we can also stock the spares. And the next one is the head office, where we maintain all the accounting transactions, and also we raise the invoices. So coming to the process flow, let's say the organization employee wants to raise an asset request. So the first process before raising the request is the asset procurement. Any company, it could be any type of asset. It could be hardware or a software. It could be for any electronic equipments that is required for the company. It could be a furniture. So whatever is required for the company or the organization will be procured using this asset procurement module. So we will have many vendors and we will raise the purchase order, purchase intent, and the purchase quotation to multiple vendors. So once the procurement happens, the inward process will happen, and all the assets will be stocked within the warehouse or the inventory, right? So organization will have multiple branch locations, also the main warehouse where all the assets will be stocked. Now, let's say that an employee is raising an asset request. Once the request is raised, the next step is it goes to the manager or any higher authority for an approval. Once the asset is approved, if it is not out of stock, then the asset is issued to the employee, right? And if it is out of stock, again, a asset procurement will be raised, and it will be sent to the vendor. So again, the cyclic process happens. The purchase quotation, purchase intent, purchase order will be raised to the vendor, and after that, the inward or the GRN process will happen, and the assets will be stocked within the inventory, right? And whenever the employee leaves the organization, asset will be returned to the company by the employee. So this is the holistic process of asset management, right? Now we are going to take a specific use case where we have all the vendor details within the asset management system, and we're going to let's take Zoho Creator and also Zoho Books. In Zoho Creator, let's take account A, and within this account A, let's take asset management application, right? And within this asset management application, let's assume that we have maintained all the vendor details. Now, let's also assume that we have Zoho Books for maintaining all the financial transactions, right? And this is account A. This might have multiple organizations. Let's take Zilker organization. So here we'll be creating multiple ledgers. It could be customer or a vendor. So whenever a customer is being created in Zoho Books, it has to be pushed to Zoho Creator. So this can happen in multiple ways. One is using the connection object and the inbuilt integration task. Another is using OAuth and the V2 API, right? So if Zoho Creator has an account called account A and Zoho Books is in a different account called account B, then we can make use of OAuth V2 API for the data flow to happen between Zoho Books and Zoho Creator. So now let's get into the demonstration. So I'll take you to the application that we have built, which is called Zilker Information Technology Asset Management. So this has got all companies and all location details. We have captured all the location details here. All the employee details, department details, and the role details are maintained within this particular master data. And we're also handling the vendor transaction. So we're maintaining the vendor master data where we're capturing the vendor name, vendor contact, email, and vendor address. So this is the form which we will be using, making use of to fetch the data and push it from Zoho Books and push it to this particular form. So we also have asset masters like asset types, like operating assets, tangible assets, current assets, and fixed assets. Further, we have asset categories like IT equipments, hardware, and furnitures. And further, we have asset subcategories, unit metrics, and also the asset master. So with the help of the asset type and the asset category, we are creating the assets. And once the asset is being created, we are maintaining the inventory. So before the application is being installed or before the application is being hosted, the company would have maintained the physical stock, right? So all those physical stock can be fed into the opening stock, and this will be the one-time stock. So this can be fed in based on the location. So we are maintaining all the asset inventory details here. And the first step is to procure all the assets using the asset procurement module. So let's make a quick entry here. We have purchase order number, purchase order date, due date, receiving branch, and the status. And we have asset to be procured as a subform. And this has got asset name, unit metrics, price, available quantity, quantity, subtotal. So let's quickly make an entry in the procurement module. I'm giving the purchase order number as 88393 and the purchase order date as, let's say, 13th, and the purchase order due date as 19th, and the receiving branch would be the Zilker Lakeview. So here the status would be open, and I'm choosing the asset. So whenever I choose the receiving branch, all the relevant assets will be loaded here. Let me choose Redmi Note, and the unit gets loaded automatically. We have already captured this in the asset master, and based on the workflow logic, we have auto-populated the unit metrics price based on the asset that we are choosing. So the price is 10,000 and the available quantity, let's take the available quantity as 500, and the quantity, the order quantity or the procurement quantity to be, let's say, 50. And we're calculating the subtotal. And based on the list of items, let's add another item as well. 1 plus nexus, number of pieces, and let's take the available quantity, and again the order quantity and subtotal, and the total gets calculated automatically. If there are any shipping and handling charges, we can give the shipping and handling charges here. So once this is calculated, we can submit it. So here you can add the procurement, and once the invert has happened, you can mark the status to be completed, right? So for the asset inventory, so whenever the invert process happens, the asset inventory available quantity gets increased. So in Redmi Note, the available quantity is 140. So I'll edit the application. I'll quickly go to the workflow, and I'm getting into the function invert stock update. Once you're executing this function, you can pass the procurement ID here. So I'm getting into the procurement module and I'm passing on the ID. So just to show how the asset gets updated. Once you submit it, so we'll check what has happened. So once you submit the information, let's change the status to be completed. Okay. So let's see what has happened. And okay, now let's get back to the flow. So what happens is when you get into the asset inventory, the Redmi Note and OnePlus Nexus are the procured items, and for this procured item, the available quantity gets increased. So this we can handle within the workflow logic, right? And apart from that, we also have asset request. So this asset request will be raised by the employee. So here we have the requested by, and I've chosen the requested by and requested date, employee ID, employee location, employee email. So all these gets populated automatically based on the workflow logic, and we are choosing the employee manager. And we are also adding the asset type. Here I'm choosing the operating asset, and based on the asset type, the asset category gets loaded. Now let's say I'm choosing IT equipments and Redmi Note. So the available quantity is 140. In this available quantity, let me choose the quantity to be 1. So the employee is requesting for the asset and I'm submitting it. So after this, the admin can issue this asset to the employee. So the admin can make use of this module, all asset issue written, to issue the asset to the employee. You can choose the asset, you can choose the issue quantity, and you can choose the issue date, issued by, and whom you have issued to, the written date, and the written quantity. So again, I'll get into the asset request master. Once you edit this request, so let's say that the employee has already received this Redmi Note. Now, let's say this employee wants to return the asset. In that case, there is a checkbox, and you can make use of this checkbox, scroll towards the right, and enable this checkbox. Once you enable this checkbox, the issue quantity will get generated. All the asset details that we have generated here is getting loaded here. So you can choose issued to, written date, and also the written quantity. Once you update the written quantity, this will also get updated in the stock. Right. So this is about the asset issue and written. And apart from that, every assets can undergo the maintenance and services that can be handled within all asset maintenance module. So this has got raised by asset complaint number, so complaint description, date, and the status. So apart from that, we are also maintaining the vehicle master. We're capturing all the vehicle details here, where you will get to see the vehicle details, maintenance schedule details, previous service details, and all the trip details. So all the service centers are captured here, and service center map locations you can see within the report. So we also have the vehicle transaction form, where you have all maintenance schedules, where all the maintenance schedules for the vehicle is captured here. And we have the service details. So the service, we have the checklist on a regular basis, what needs to be checked. So the mechanic or to whom the job is being allocated, they can enable this checkbox, and they can mark the checklist, add the remarks, and submit the information. So once a service is created, it will go for the approval, and then a job card will be created. And apart from that, we also have the billing details. Billing details, where we have all bill details here. So in this billing details, you can get to, you will get the vehicle number, model number, how many, what is the charge of the spare parts, and also the labor charge, subtotal, and the net bill total. So you can generate the invoice from the bill details. And we have scheduled maintenance timeline. So you can add the scheduled maintenance timeline in this report. And we also have the status update. So once the service is being created, is it waiting for the spares, or if the service is completed, we can mark it as completed. Who's the service in charge? What is the schedule date? What is the estimated completed completion time? And what is the overall status? So apart from that, whenever it goes for the approval, we can get to check if it is in the pending status or if it is in the completed status. So we are also capturing the trip details. So the trip can be for the employees to drop the employees, or to procure the raw materials, or to procure the asset, or to do the stock transfer as well. So here we can capture the driver name, vehicle number, trip starting point, trip ending point, trip date, start time, and the end time, right? So these are the set of modules that are available within this Zilker Information Technology Asset Management. Now, we will get on to Zoho Books. Within this Zoho Books, we are maintaining all the financial transactions, right? Under this purchase, we have the vendor details, right? So ABC Corp and Zillium Private Limited, these are the few vendors that we have already created within the vendor transaction. Here, we have the primary contact, company name, and vendor display name is the mandatory field. So we have added all this information, the company name, email address, workforce, payables, unused credits. So we've given this information within the vendor master, right? And when you get into the gear icon on the top right corner, so navigate towards this automation, and when you go towards the end, you have this custom function. So now let's write a custom function to push the vendor details from Zoho Books to Zoho Creator. Let's see how this is done. So before creating a function within Zoho Books, let's get into Zoho Creator's V2 API documentation. Our co-trainers will be sharing this documentation with you. So with the help of this step-by-step procedure, we will make use of this V2 API documentation and the V2 API URL to push the data from Zoho Books to Zoho Creator. So I'm getting into the documentation now. So OAuth documentation for V2 API. First, a process is to register the client. Now, when you get into this register clients, you could see five processes, right? So I'm getting into the first process, which is registration of the client. So here, it would ask you to go to the developer console. So if it is the first time that you're registering the client, get into this developer console. So this is how the developer console will look like. I'll get into the sample one and I'll show you how to add a client. So you can add a server-based application, client-based application, or a self-client based on your requirement. Now I'm creating a server-based application. So you can give the client name, you can give the homepage URL, authorized redirect URL. Let me quickly give you the names here. So authorized redirect URI doesn't need to be a valid URI. So you can give the client name. I'm giving the client name as asset management. So here, once you hit on this create, it will give you the client ID and client secret. So this client ID and client secret will be used for the further steps. And when you get into the settings, you can use the same OAuth credentials for all the data center. Just enable this. So I have already created, let's close this window now. I've already created a client and the client name is Zillium Asset. I've given the homepage URL and this is the authorized redirect URI. So once you create it, I've received the client ID and client secret. So I've made a note of this client ID and client secret here. This is the client ID, this is the client secret, and this is the redirect URI. Now, the first process is over, right? Coming to the second step, which is requesting for the authorization code. So whenever you want two applications to communicate with one another, the first process that happens is sending an authorization request, right? So the client application would want to send a request to access all the protected resources within Zoho Creator's application, right? Now, the next step is to make the authorization request. To make this authorization request, when you get into the documentation, there will be a URL. So just make use of this URL. I've already copied and I've pasted this URL within the notepad. So HTTPS account, let me copy this again. So accounts.zoho.com. So if your account is within the IN data center, then it'll be zoho.in/OAuth v2, and we have the response type, code, client ID, scope, redirect URI, and the access type, right? Now we have the client ID, we have the redirect URI, we need to get the scopes, and with this we are done. So we'll make use of this to get the response, right? Now, I've already placed the client ID. You can replace this client ID here. I'm just showing you the sample. I'm replacing here with our own client ID. And when you get into the documentation, copy this and replace with the client ID here. So when you get into the documentation, you will get to see the scopes. So let me get into the overview again. Type as scope. So get into creator scopes. And these are the list of scopes. When I say scopes, these are the list of operations that can be performed within Zoho Creator application. So Zoho Creator.form.create, any third-party application that wants to access Zoho Creator's application data can perform any of these functions. Zoho Creator.form.create, Zoho Creator.report.create, Zoho Creator.report.read, and you can see the rest within the documentation. So these are meant for different purposes. Zoho Creator.form.create to add the records in the form. Zoho Creator.report.create to upload the files in Reckitt that are displayed in the reports. So you can go through this documentation. Now I'll get back to the request authorization code. Now let's get back to the notepad. So we are defining all the scopes using the comma separated value. I wanted to create a Reckitt. So I'm using Zoho creator.form.create, and I'll have to create the report, upload the data within my report. I'll have to update the report, and I might need to delete the record as well. So I'm adding all the scopes, and the scopes are separated using the comma. So comma is the delimiter here, and we have the redirect URI. So we already have the redirect URI. While creating the client, we've gotten the redirect URI, right? I mean, we've added the redirect URI. So you can replace the redirect URI within this URL. And you can specify the access type. So which we are specifying it as offline. So that generates the access and refresh token once. So once you hit this in the browser, you will get the authorization code. And that authorization code, let me just take this and place it in the browser. So here you will get the code. Already the authorization has happened. So you can take this code and this will be the authorization code. Right? So I've already copied this code here, and we'll go to the next step. I'm getting into the documentation. So we have registered the client. We have gotten the authorization code as well. And with the help of this authorization code is like a short-lived code. So which will be valid only for a minute. So with the help of this authorization code, we'll have to generate the tokens. So this token generation or the token key will be used for the data communication, right? So for this, we'll be making use of the HTTPS base account, this particular URL. Base account URL, OAuth v2 API token. We are passing the client ID, we are passing the client secret, redirect URI, and the authorization code, right? So in the previous step, we have received the authorization code that we are making use of to generate the tokens. So once you place this URL, this is the response that you would get. So you will get the access token and you will get the refresh token. So this access token is also a short-lived token, which will be valid only for 1 hour, 60 minutes. That is 60 minutes. So we also have the refresh token, which doesn't have the expiry. So what we'll be doing is we'll make use of this refresh token to generate access token instantaneously so that the data flow happens in an uninterrupted way, right? So for to get I'll get into the documentation. So to generate the tokens and to get the access token from the refresh token, we have written two different custom functions within Zoho Creator. So for step 3 and step 4, we have custom functions written within Zoho Creator, and I've gotten within workflow and within the function, navigate to functions, and you will have, I've written access and refresh token and get access from refresh token. So these are two different functions. Now I'll get into the first function. I'll quickly walk you through the code. I'll also zoom in the screen. So when you get into the documentation, you can see the different types of arguments that you need to pass in. That is a parameter. You'll need to pass the client ID, you'll need to pass the client secret, and you'll need to pass the redirect URI and also the authorization code that you have received in the previous step, right? So here we're passing S code, S underscore client ID and client secret as a parameter. Now we have created a map variable and named it as M underscore parameter. And when you, within this M parameter, we are passing the key value pair. Client ID is a key and S underscore client ID is a value. Similar to that, we are passing the client ID, client secret, redirect URI, and the authorization code. And we are making use of the invoke URL. Within this invoke URL, we are passing 3 different arguments. One is a URL, that is the V2 API, and the next one is the type. The type is post, and the parameters. We have already created the parameters and we have passed in the key value pair. And we are passing this M underscore parameter. And we are getting the response, and we'll be getting the response in the form of JSON, right? So from this step, we would be receiving the access and refresh token, right? We'll be making use of that. This is the response. This is how we will receive the response. So we'll get access token and also we'll get refresh token. And I'll make use of this refresh token to get another access token. This is the 4th step. Let me close this one. So get access token from the refresh token. We've already completed a register client, request authorization code, and generate tokens. Now, the next step is to refresh the access token using the refresh token. So I'm getting into the function and I'll quickly walk you through the function. So similar to the invoke URL that we wrote for the previous function, we're also writing for the next function. And here we are passing the URL, the type is post, and also the parameter is M underscore parameter. So now let's see what are the arguments or what are the values that we are passing in within the map variable M underscore parameter. So we have the refresh token, and with this refresh token that we received from the previous step, we'll be getting the access token. So I'm getting into the 4th step. And for this 4th step as well, we have the request URL where we are passing refresh token as one argument, client ID as another argument, client secret as the 3rd argument, right? So I've just replicated that within the function. Client ID, client secret, redirect URI, grant type, and also the refresh token. Once we pass in the parameter, we'll get the response, which is the access token. Now I'm executing it, and this is the access token, which I can make use of within my function. So this will be the key that the client will use to access the Zoho Creator data and functionality. So now I'm getting into Zoho Books. All the processes are done of the client registration, token generation processes are done, right? Now, I'm going to make use of this V2 API of Zoho Creator to fetch the data from Zoho Books and push it to Creator. Let's write a function here. I'm giving the function name to be push vendor details to Creator. I'm giving the description as push vendor from Zoho Books to Zoho Creator. And you'll have to choose the module. So here the module is vendor that comes under contact. So whenever you choose this, it will show you the JSON structure, which will have the key value pair. So when you get into this vendor, this is the API name which we have to make use of. So contact ID, contact name, company name, ABC Corp, first name, last name. Now, let's write an invoke URL function. So with this invoke URL function, I'm going to create a map variable called m_response. So the response that I get from this invoke URL is the JSON format. And there are 4 arguments that I need to pass. One is a URL, another is a type, third one is a parameter, and fourth one is a header. So let's go to this URL part. So since we are going to add records into Creator, let's get into the API documentation. And within this API documentation, our co-trainers will be sharing the link for the same. Get into this data APIs, and within this data APIs, we have API to add records into Creator, right? So this is the sample request. Now, let me copy this request. I'm copying this request and I'm placing this within the URL. So instead of directly placing it within the URL, I'm going to create a string variable and I'm passing this URL within that string variable. And let's replace all the account information. Excuse me. So after this v2/, we have account owner name. So in this case, the account owner name is different. So get into the application, hit on the browser URL, and you will get to see creator 1234. So this is the portal name or the account owner name. Replace JSON 18 with this account owner name. And followed by that, we have /Zilker store, which is the application name. So here the application name is Zilker Information Technology Asset. So I'm copying this application name from the URL and place it within my custom function. So to which form should I have to push the data? So within Creator, we'll have to push the data to vendor form, right? So when you edit this application, you will get to see the form names. I'm choosing vendor. And within vendor, open the form builder. And on the top right corner, you have 3 dotted lines where you can go ahead to copy the form link name. So I'm placing the form link name here. Right? Now we have the SURL, end with a semicolon. So now let me pass this s_URL as one of the arguments. The next argument is the type. Since we're going to add the record into Zoho Creator, we'll be making use of the method called post. And the third argument is a parameter. So what is the data that I'm going to pass in? I'm creating a map variable called m_params. So I'm declaring a map variable. So whenever you create a map variable and keep a dot over it, it will display all the functions or operations that you can perform for a map variable. So put all, remove, is empty, key. So now we are going to make use of put and we're going to pass in the key value pair. So first is a key, second is a value. So how do you pass a key value pair? I'll zoom in a bit. On the left hand side, we are passing the key as the Zoho Creators field link name. I'm getting into the vendor form, and within this vendor form, I'm passing this vendor name, that is the field link name, as the key. And the value is, let's take this value, vendor.getOf company name. So instead of this company name, let's get into the map structure, the data structure, and let's copy the contact name. So this is one key value pair. Similar to that, I wanted to get the email address and also the phone number, right? Now, I'm choosing the vendor contact field link name and I'm placing that within the key value pair. One is the vendor contact, and from the map data, I'm choosing the phone number. We've given the mobile number. And the third one is the email address. So from the form link name, let's get the email address and let's place it here. On the left hand side, it's Zoho Creators field link name, and on the right hand side, it is Zoho Books API name. So vendor is a module name. .get off is you're getting it from the JSON structure. So what is the email API name for email? I'm picking it from here and I'm placing it here. So the next response is we're creating another map variable. So let me create the map variable as m_rec param, and we're forming another structure to it. So the structure goes this way: m_rec param dot put of data. So under the data, so data will be the key, and I'm passing m_params as a value. So under this data, you will have all the list of vendor details that comes under the data. That comes as a list. So this is another variable. And we're also going to create another variable called headers. So we'll pass this parameter, which is m_rec param, and we are making use of toString here. The fourth argument that we're going to pass is the headers. So within this headers, I'm creating another map variable, which is called m_header. So, and we're passing the key value pair. m_header dot put of. So let's take that from the documentation. And here I'm passing the authorization. This is the key and I'm passing the value, comma. The value goes this way. So this is going to be the value. Let us replace that with our own access token. So get access from refresh token. I'm going to making use of this refresh token to get the new access token. I'm executing the function. Let's copy this access token. And we can automate this process as well. So I'm passing the refresh token and getting the new access token. And we're passing this as one of the arguments, m_header. So we'll also info the response, m_response. Let's save this. We'll have to end with a semicolon. Now let's save and execute this. So once you execute this function, uh, we can choose the vendor ID. So click here to get the list. We will have 3 vendors which we have created in Zoho Books. Let's choose this ABC Corp. So this is the record ID of this ABC Corp. Once you execute it, you will get a success message, which is code 3000. The data has been added successfully, right? Now, when you get into Creator, you could see that this vendor information would have gotten added into Creator's application. That is Creator's vendor form, ABC Corp, vendor contact, email address. And if you, we can also add the vendor address. So this is the entirety of how an API, V2 API works between Creator and Zoho's ecosystem or any other third-party application. We can make use of Zoho Creator's V2 API with any Zoho's ecosystem or Zoho application or any third-party application. So we'll move on to the next topic. Which is OAS. What do you mean by OAS? So this is one of the new offerings within Zoho Creator. We call it as Open API Specification, which is formerly known as Swagger Specification. So this is like a descriptive file which can translate all your basic API structure to a different code syntaxes in the language that you prefer to. And it is widely used for all the REST API operation. Since Zoho Creator supports all the REST API, you can create or generate the OAS file for all the actions that you perform within Zoho Creator. So an OPI file describes an API in its entirety. This will include the endpoints, authentication methods, operation parameters, and the contact information. So when I say endpoint, let's say there is a developer who has built an application using PHP or a different language called Go language or Java. Now, let's say that he wanted, there is a legacy system. This legacy system is maintaining the warehouse management. So all the warehouse management happens within this legacy system. Now, the code is written using PHP. So this application wants to communicate with Zoho Creator. Let's say that all the customer information, order information is being maintained within Zoho Creator. Now the communication has to happen to and fro between Zoho Creator and also the legacy system, right? So since the legacy system, the code used within the legacy system is PHP. So, and the V2 API structure that we have, the V2 API structure documentation that we have will have the deluge code, right? That is the JSON structure. So for the better understanding, to make the developers work easier. So for each API action, it could be add record or delete record, or for the entire set of API operations, we can have the OAS file downloaded and uploaded into this legacy system, similar to the SDK file. So this descriptive file will have endpoints. It will have the documents, API documentation structure, like operations like get user, post users, authentication methods, what is the request URL, how would you receive the response, what are the operation parameters for each operation, and the contact information, the license information, terms of use, and other information as well. Now, why is this OAS used? So you can have the dynamic languages specific API guide generated, and also the code will get generated specifically based on the language you have written for the third-party application. And this documentation is a readable kind of documentation. So to meet all the industry standards, we're making use of this OAS file specification. And most of the tools like Postman or Insomnia supports this OAS file specification. So we have a Swagger Hub and Swagger Editor is like an interface or the editor tools that are used for working with this open API specification, that is OAS. So we can upload this OAS specification document into the Swagger Hub. I'll show you how the Swagger Hub and the Swagger Editor will look like. So before that, we'll also look into the OAS file format. So it supports two different file formats. One is the most preferred one, which is JSON, and another is a YAML, yet another markup language. So let's say you have some configuration files. You wanted to connect your Creator application with Postgres, and you wanted to mention the configuration. In that case, you can go for the YAML language. And how Creators API is enhanced by OAS. So OAS as a doc and individual OAS file. What does this mean? Entire API actions like add records, update records, delete records, everything will be covered or downloaded as one OAS file. This OAS file structure will have data, publish, file, meta, bulk APIs that we saw previously, right? And if you want any specific action to be performed, you can just download that specific OAS file. Let's say that you wanted to just add record and you wanted to include the API structure specifications for add record. In that case, you can download the OAS file just for add record and then upload it into the Swagger. So this is how the implementation flow looks like. Let's say the customer wants to add the record and update the record. When you get into the Zoho Creator help documentation, you will have you can download the respective OAS file. And once you get into the Swagger editor, you can upload this OAS file, generate the client for a specific language. It could be Go language or PHP language or Python language, similar to the SDK file. And you can incorporate, you can download the script and you can incorporate that within your third-party application or the legacy system. So we'll get into the demonstration quickly. So I'll get into the Open API specification documentation. So this will be shared, this documentation reference will be shared by our co-trainers. So here we have the Open API specification. And if you have to download OAS, you can download the OAS for all the API functions. Or if you wanted to download OAS for a specific action, you can make use of it, like add records, get record, detailed view. And these are the set of actions. You can download a single OAS file as well. Now it has gotten downloaded, right? Now let me get into the Swagger Hub. I've created a client. I've created another client called Zilker Asset and Vehicle for Swagger. So here I have the client name, homepage URL, and within this authorized redirect URL, I've added app.swaggerhub.com OAuth2_redirect. So this is the authorized redirect URI that I've added, right? So here I have created an account within Swagger Hub, and this is how the Swagger editor will look like. On the left-hand side, you can see the entire API structure, which has got the JSON data structure format, the request URL, response URL, and on the right-hand side, you could see the documentation and the server information. So based on the data center, you could select the URL and you can perform the authorization as well. I'll take you through the authorization process. So here within my Swagger Hub account, hit on this create new and hit on this import and document API. So import and document API, browse it, and we have add records JSON format. So I'm uploading this add records JSON format into the Swagger Hub. And we have the owner, project, and visibility. You can set the visibility to be public or private. So I'm setting the visibility to be public here. You can specify the name and also the version. So I'm importing this and all the data structure, data API information has gotten added. So this is for add record. This has got the request URL name and the description for it, how would the request body looks like, and what are the responses that you would get. So all the title, tags, description can be seen within the data API. So on the right-hand side, you have the server and also the authorize. I'm choosing US data center here. And within this authorize, so whatever operations that we have performed for V2 API, So we gave the client ID, we gave the client secret. So we've given the client ID. I've already given the client ID and I've already given the client secret. And you can specify the scopes here. I've enabled all the scopes here. Once you've enabled the scope, the mapping will automatically happen. Now the authorization has happened. So when you scroll towards the end, we have the data API to add, update, delete, or get the records in the form, right? So towards the end, you have try it out. So you can consider this as a client, similar to how you have in Postman. And you can actually give the account owner name, app link name, and form link name, execute it and see whether it is, you can give the static data and you can see whether it is getting added into Creator. Now, I'm clicking on this tryout, and since I've already given the data previously, it shows the account owner name as creator1234, which is the account owner name here, and app link name, form link name as vendor. So we're going to push the information into the vendor form, right? And the request body is a JSON. So I've constructed the JSON structure here, and within the data, so the curly braces indicates the map variable, and the square bracket indicates the list variable. So within this, we have three fields like vendor name, email, and vendor contact within Zoho Creator. I've given the field link name as a key and the static information on the right hand side as a value. JSON at zilker.com, boil, and p.boil at zilker.com, right? So this is the data structure. Now, once you execute it, you could see the response. So curl, this is how the response looks like. So this is the data structure that I've passed in, and this is the request URL, and the code is 200, which means that the data has gotten added successfully. So this is the response body, which you can download it. You can see the response header as well. So the data has been added successfully. And now when you get into Creator, when you refresh it, the two records would have gotten added. The vendor name, JSON, and the other name would have gotten added, vendor name, vendor contact, and also the email address, right? So another important point is that the dynamic language generation, the code generation. So I'm getting into the Swagger Hub again. We have this export option. Let's say that the developer works in a different language. The third-party application or the legacy system is built using Go or Java or JavaScript. And you want the V2 API structure and syntaxes to be in JavaScript. In that case, you can click on this and you can export the SDK file and you can import this script into your third-party application. So it supports all the languages. You could see the different languages, and we have the server stub. These are the different server stub that is supported, and you can download the API as well. So in this way, it makes the developers' works easier, and it provides the clear structure and syntaxes for the REST APIs that is available within Zoho Creator. So whenever there is an update, the update information will be updated within the OAS file as well. So this is about the Open API specification. So as I mentioned, there are other use cases like warehouse management, where the customer is using Creator as online database management and managing all the warehouse details and tracking transportation and delivery system and legacy system. So let's say that this customer has built a legacy system with PHP. And since it's his base data, he wants to store it in his own server. So here we have a legacy system and we have Zoho Creator. So to push the data, you'll have to write the code in PHP. When you make use of the Swagger Hub and Open API specification, you can generate the code using the PHP code, and this will be generated as an SDK file, which you can make use of within your application. So here is a diagrammatic representation. Within Zoho Creator, we have employee details, product details, and customer details. And within the legacy system, we have all the warehouse information. So similar to that, we have a tracking delivery system. Let's say that this is written with the Go language for the IoT features. And here we have Zoho Creator, where we have maintained the order details, product details, and customer details. And within the legacy system, we have the tracking deliveries, fleet management, assigning deliveries, and the tracking system. So you can download the OAS file and you can export it in the Go language. And this will be exported as similar to the SDK file, which can be incorporated within your legacy system for the data communication to happen. So we've got few key pointers with respect to V2 API and Open API specification. A maximum of 200 records can be processed per request. And the next point is API requests are limited to 50 per minute, and this is per API endpoint per public IP address. So the total number of requests that can be made per day is completely subjective to your subscription. So you can refer to the usage details for the billing and the subscription details. And only when you have API access permission, you can have the API communication, the data flow to happen between two applications. When, let's say, there are 10 different applications within an account, only for 2 applications, the API access is enabled. So the third-party application or any other application within Zoho's ecosystem can communicate only with those 2 applications, as the API access is enabled only for those 2 apps. So for other apps, a status code called 1130 will be generated, saying that you do not have permission to access these apps. So with respect to OAS file, as you saw previously, we'll have to choose the base URL based on the data center. If you are an IN data center, you'll have to go with the IN base URL. So with this, we are coming to end of the session. So to put it in a nutshell, we saw about V2 API and how the data flow can happen between 2 different accounts using V2 API, and how does the Swagger Hub and Open API specification helps in generating the API structure and syntaxes in different languages, and how it can be used as an SDK file within your legacy or third-party application as per the language specification. So we have upcoming sessions in Learning Table series and also Creator Tech Connect series. So, I'm sorry. Learning Table series, we have introduced 12 industries, 12 months concept. So each month we would take a specific industry and we would take a specific business case relatable to that industry. And the session will be around that particular industrial business case. So the next, for the April month, we've taken digitizing logistics operation with Zoho Creator. So Learning Tables series will span around 40 to 45 minutes. It's happening on May 4th, 9 p.m. IST time. And we also have Creator Tech Connect series. For the May month, we have Creator release updates, and it's happening on 11th May, 9 p.m. IST time. Our co-trainers will be sharing the registration links with you. Along with this, we're maintaining all the recordings of Learning Table series 2022 and 2023, and also for the Creator Tech Connect series for 2022 and 2023 in a separate playlist, that is in the YouTube playlist. Our co-trainers will be sharing the YouTube playlist also with you. Please make use of all those learning resources. I'm sure you'd be benefited out of it. So if you have any further questions, you can pose them in the questions tab. I think our co-trainers are already answering them. For any further questions, you can reach out to training@zohocreator.com. Hope you found the session to be useful. Thank you so much for being part of the session.